What if your fatigue, brain fog, and racing heart weren't just stress, but histamine overload your body can't handle?
We're going to dive deep into the overlooked connection between histamine intolerance, long COVID, and chronic fatigue ME/CFS.
We'll also explore how to naturally restore balance through food, support methylation, heal your gut lining, and reduce histamine symptoms without relying on constant antihistamines or elimination diets.
This video will offer you insights and practical tools to support your recovery naturally.
And I'll be back at the end with my fun fact.
In this video, we're going back to a time when nobody could explain what was happening to Elliot. He had symptoms that the doctors dismissed as psychological. They called it panic attacks brought on by stress. But we saw something different because antihistamines were the only thing that were helping him. But everyone kept telling us that histamines weren't the problem. But now, years later, millions of people suffering from long COVID are experiencing similar symptoms. And here's the twist. New science shows that antihistamines might actually be helping them, but not because of allergies, but because of something deeper happening inside their body. So, could this be the missing link between ME/CFS, long COVID, and post-viral fatigue? And if it is, what does that mean for treatment? Stay with us because this story could change the way we understand chronic illness. It is really important. If you're dealing with symptoms like brain fog, racing heart, and sudden temperature changes, strange symptoms like flushing and bloating, panic attacks after eating certain foods, or chronic fatigue, and doctors keep telling you that it's just stress, then you're not alone. Because in 2018, we were in the same boat with Elliot. The official diagnosis he was given was ME/CFS, and the suggested treatment was antidepressants. But what if the real problem was something else entirely? This video is for general educational purposes and it's based on our own experience. Elliot had always struggled with hay fever every summer, but things took a really bad turn for him when he turned 17. And he first started feeling really ill. His face was just red, his eyes were puffy, his tummy was bloated and sore, and his heart was racing. He was struggling to breathe, but the doctors kept saying he just wasn't allergic to anything. The doctors just kept saying that the symptoms he was experiencing were just classic symptoms of ME/CFS. Do you experience these symptoms? We discovered something that changed everything. And that was that over-the-counter antihistamines actually helped him improve his symptoms. That raised a huge question. If antihistamines were helping him with his symptoms, but allergies weren't the cause, what was? And how could we fix it naturally without relying on meds for the rest of his life? So in this video, we're going to explore how your body uses two vital enzymes to break down histamines. And we'll also look at why you might be deficient in them and how simple changes in your diet and nutrients like vitamin B12 can support your body's ability to heal. I'm also going to share with you the most beneficial natural compound that's made a tremendous difference to Elliot's health so that he very rarely needs any antihistamines now. So if you're looking for real answers and natural relief, then you're in the right place. The good news is that science is starting to catch up now. A science article that I'm going to link in the description below is really interesting because it says that manifestations of long COVID include high heart rate, postural tachycardia, and palpitations. And it says that patients were treated with antihistamines and long COVID symptoms disappeared completely in 29% of the treated patients. And there was a significant improvement in each of the considered symptoms. They either improved or disappeared in all the treated patients, and the improvement grade was significantly greater in treated patients compared to controls. So in that study, the long COVID patients were treated with antihistamines and there was a significant improvement or their symptoms completely disappeared. So that is an amazing finding because if histamines are responsible for those symptoms in the long COVID patients and the antihistamines had a significant effect on everybody that took them, then it really does show that histamines are playing a huge part in causing the symptoms for people with ME, CFS and long COVID, because antihistamine medication blocks the histamine receptors in the body, and it was improving symptoms like brain fog, difficulty breathing and the elevated heart rate in the patients. So if these symptoms are not caused by allergies, as in Elliot's case, and the long COVID patients, and antihistamines improve those symptoms, what is causing the high histamine levels and what can we do to fix them properly? So I'm going to be referring to this scientific paper, which is called Histamine Intolerance, Symptoms, Diagnosis and Beyond, and it was published in 2024. We're also going to look at the research of Greg Russell Jones, and all the links are going to be in the description below. First of all, let's find out what histamine is. Histamine is actually like your body's security guard. It sends messages telling your body what it needs to do to protect itself. And it really is essential in small amounts because it fights germs and it helps your brain talk to your body and it even wakes you up. But the thing is, our body should automatically get rid of any excess histamines. And to do that, we have two different enzymes. However, if those enzymes are not working well, histamines can build up to really high levels, and that can cause the symptoms that mimic allergic reactions. And it's estimated that 1 in 100 people might have this problem, and scientists call it histamine intolerance, and also mast cell activation syndrome, or MICAS. So how do you know if histamines are causing you your problems? Do you experience symptoms maybe half an hour or up to 2 hours after you've eaten a meal? You could be getting tummy troubles, bloating, constipation, diarrhea or nausea after you've eaten, or maybe you get a runny nose and congestion, or breathing difficulties. Maybe you get brain fog or feeling really zoned out and dizzy, or headaches and migraines that come on after you've eaten, or maybe hives, itching, rashes and flushing like sunburn, or maybe muscle weakness and heart palpitations. Some of these could be triggered by certain foods because some foods are naturally high in histamines, but histamines can also build up in some foods as that food gets older, and that makes it quite hard for the medical professionals to identify the problem because it doesn't show up with the food elimination diets that they usually use to identify triggers. For example, Elliot could eat a meal one day and be absolutely fine, but if he ate the leftovers the next day, he would have a horrible reaction. So particular foods that are known to be triggers are seafoods or aged cheese. Also, some people react to chocolate and nuts and milk. Some fruits and vegetables, including bananas and tomatoes, avocados and spinach, maybe strawberries and oranges, can also have quite a lot of histamines in it. It's also important to know that there are some things that can affect your ability to remove histamines, and that includes some medications, including some antihistamines can actually reduce the effectiveness of your enzyme that naturally gets rid of histamines. I'll put a list on the screen of some of the other medications. And also alcohol, and in women, the menstrual cycle has a profound effect on your histamine levels. So in a moment, we're going to look at how we can heal our body and actually address the root issue of these problems. But first, it's important to look at what the advice on the internet says and how when I followed it with Elliot, it actually made things worse for him because at that time I didn't really know much about nutrition, and because there was no medical guidance, I fell into all sorts of Google rabbit holes looking for answers. I spent ages trying to find the freshest food for him and cooking it immediately and then freezing it so that it didn't build up histamines. And basically I just cut out everything that could have high histamines. It did give Elliot some relief from the awful allergic reactions that it looked like he was having, even though they weren't real allergic reactions. It was still the histamines that were causing the same problems. But by cutting out foods, his energy levels just crashed. So if you do cut out foods, it really is important to take advice from a nutritionist or a dietitian before making any significant changes to your diet. And I was really careful to have Elliot's low histamine diet checked to ensure that it really was well balanced and that it was providing everything he needed. And also remember, everyone's tolerance to histamines is different, and most people really don't need to cut out all the high histamine foods because most people's histamine bucket only overflows, causing the horrible symptoms occasionally if they've overindulged in a lot of the high histamine foods or a lot of alcohol that reduces the effectiveness of the enzymes. You may find relief just by cutting out a few of the high histamine foods just for a little while. That science article says that if you do try a low histamine diet, then it's really important to gradually start reintroducing the high histamine foods after a month and then monitor how you react. That article did say that when a low histamine diet was used for a month, the tummy troubles and the other issues were reported to improve, and also the enzyme levels did increase when people kept to the diet. Unfortunately, I was just so terrified of the horrible reactions that Elliot was experiencing that I was terrified to introduce any of those foods back again. And unfortunately, he gradually developed more and more intolerances to other foods as well. And it ended up with him eating a really restricted diet, which I know many people with intolerances end up on. And it just became a downward spiral that made his nutritional deficiencies worse in the long term. And then that created a host of other issues. So Elliot was never diagnosed with histamine intolerance, and he never received any medical support other than cheap over-the-counter antihistamines that I bought him. But at that time, I was incredibly frustrated and upset that the doctors didn't recognise it, but they just didn't have any system to treat it because there's no guidelines to treat it. And it's not something that you're going to find discussed on the NHS website. But looking back now, I'm actually quite glad that I had no option but to learn how to do research and to find real answers, and that we learned how to address the root cause, because it has really sparked a genuine passion to understand how our bodies work. And I really want to share the science that I've learned to help you if you're experiencing these same horrible issues that Elliot suffered with. So the thing is, if relying on antihistamines and cutting out food isn't the answer, then what is? Well, our bodies are just amazing and have an extraordinary ability to naturally remove excess histamines using 2 different enzymes. And our body makes those enzymes that we need out of the nutrients that we eat. But if you're like Elliot, if you're deficient in any of the vitamins or minerals, your body just can't do the job that it needs to. But here's the cool part. You can fix this. We fixed it with Elliot, and so you can too. Because your body relies on 2 enzymes to keep histamines in check. The first one is called DAO, diamine oxidase. Think of that as your gut's frontline defense, because this enzyme is produced in your gut lining and it breaks down the histamines in the food that you eat. If this enzyme isn't working well, that's when you get the high histamine levels that cause the nausea and the bloating, the diarrhea and the GI distress. Now, it is actually possible to buy that enzyme, DAO, and some people can spend a lot of money supplementing this enzyme so that they can eat more foods. However, our bodies are designed to make it as long as we're eating the right ingredients. So we're going to go into that in a minute. So the second enzyme that our body uses is called histamine N-methyltransferase. HNMT is the cleanup crew inside your cells, especially in your brain and your liver, and it recycles and breaks down the histamines that are in your body. So what are the essential nutrients for these 2 enzymes? Well, the first nutrient we're going to discuss is vitamin B12. So why is vitamin B12 crucial for removing histamines? Well, vitamin B12 helps your body perform a key chemical process called methylation. And when B12 levels are low, this process slows right down and it causes all sorts of health problems, especially with your hormones, your immune system, and your energy production. But if your B12 levels are low, it's going to reduce the levels of a hormone called melatonin. Now, you might have heard of melatonin because it regulates your sleep and it also supports your gut. And having low levels of melatonin will cause several big problems for your histamine levels, because first of all, having low melatonin levels is going to give you a weak gut barrier, because basically you only have one cell between the food that you're eating and your body. Your gut lining is only 1 cell thick. Without melatonin, your gut lining doesn't develop properly. So without melatonin, the cells in your gut wall can't make that enzyme DAO, which breaks down the histamines in food. So having low melatonin levels is going to give you fewer enzymes that are going to break down your histamines. Also, having low melatonin levels leads to leaky gut syndrome. That's where toxins and undigested food particles can pass through the weak gut lining and they get into the bloodstream. And this also increases your histamine levels because our immune system reacts to them because they shouldn't be in the blood. Also, B12 is needed to produce a compound called SAM. So SAM is essential for the second enzyme that we talked about, HNMT. And that enzyme is the one that neutralizes histamines in the body. So without enough B12, there's just not enough SAM. And so histamines build up instead of being cleared away. B12 is essential for many reasons, so including removing histamines and providing our body with energy. And I have a video all about B12 and the difficulties that our body has in absorbing it, because it's actually a pretty complicated system that our bodies use, and there are many people that are deficient in it, or they're just not activating it, even if you are supplementing B12. So the three main groups of people that are at risk of having B12 deficiency are vegans, because there's no B12 in vegetables, people that are on PPI medication, and people with pernicious anemia. So what can we do to support these digestive enzymes that remove histamine? How can we eat to help our body? Well, think about leafy greens, eggs, beetroot, and liver. You may have noticed that I regularly talk about the wonders of regularly eating liver if you have any health issues, and this is why. It's because liver contains B6, vitamin C, and copper, and those are the three nutrients that the enzyme DAO needs to work. And a diet rich in these nutrients can help your body naturally restore that DAO enzyme and the activity of removing the histamines in your guts. So when Elliot was so sensitive to histamines, I'd get organic frozen liver from my local farm, and I'd cook it up quickly and then refreeze it into little 1 ounce portions. And then I can just take out 1 ounce at a time from the freezer. It really doesn't lose many nutrients when it is frozen. So remember that we need to heal our gut lining, because that's crucial too, because that's where the DAO enzyme is made. So to make the melatonin to heal our guts, it uses all the same nutrients as the enzyme HNMT requires that removes the histamines in our cells. And I'm sure it really isn't going to surprise you to learn that liver also contains plenty of B12 and the other B vitamins and the minerals and the amino acids that are required to activate that second enzyme, the HNMT enzyme, that works through the rest of our body, in our lungs, in our brain, in our skin, that gets rid of the histamines that are in our body. There are other essential nutrients that our body needs as well, and magnesium is a very crucial one, because magnesium supports so many different enzyme systems, and it also really does help with histamines on your gut. So for magnesium, chocolate is a good source, legumes and nuts and seeds, they're all good for magnesium. Also, another thing that's really important would be omega-3 fats, because they can really reduce the inflammation in your body, and they can reduce the histamine response. So eating fatty fish such as salmon, mackerel and sardines will really help if you have histamine issues. So whether you're helping your DAO enzyme in your gut or your HNMT in your cells, giving your body the proper nutrients is a game changer. So how can we check whether we're getting all the nutrients we need in our diet? There's two ways that I use. The first way is keeping a food diary, and I would really recommend keeping a food diary for about 5 days if you can. And there's a really excellent app called Chronometer. It's free. It will provide you with so much data, and you can check how nutritious your diet is. But the problem is, even if you are eating a really nutrient-rich diet, if you've been having gut issues for a long time like Elliot did, you may be struggling to absorb all the nutrients that you're eating. And we discovered that Elliot was deficient in many minerals, even though his diet had been checked by the dietitian, and it looked as though it was really well balanced and should have been giving him everything that he needed. You can actually test the minerals. And so we regularly use a specific hair test by Doctor's Data, and that measures the level of minerals in your hair. So if the levels come out low on the hair test, then it shows that your cells are really not getting the minerals that your body needs. So this test was a really good starting point that we could work out how to improve Elliot's diet and how we could make informed decisions on whether there were any supplements that might actually be helpful. I'm a practitioner for Regenerous Labs. If you do want to order a hair test, I can help you with that, and I'll include all the information in the comments below. So what's the benefits of sorting out your nutrition? Well, we've examined why nutrition is essential for keeping those two enzymes, the DAO and the HNMT. They need to be kept healthy so that they can remove the excess histamines in your body. And if they're working well, you're also going to be making melatonin, and that's going to improve your sleep and it will help you with your leaky gut issues. So Elliot really has hardly any issues with histamines anymore, and his guts work great and he sleeps really well. So it would be worth mentioning here that some of the symptoms of histamine intolerance do overlap with sulfate intolerance, which was another one that Elliot developed while he was on the restricted diet, because sulfite is a very common preservative in food, and it's actually shown on the packets as an allergen of commercial packaged food, and it's in things like bread, wine, tomato sauce. And many people that suffer with sulfite intolerance actually think that they have gluten intolerance because they have the same symptoms, but it's actually from the sulfite in the bread rather than the gluten. So once again, our bodies can inactivate sulfite if we have the right ingredients. And the mineral we need to do that is called molybdenum. Oh no. Oh dear. It's called you know the one. I've said it lots of times in other videos. So molybdenum is found in beans and legumes. So if you can eat beans and legumes regularly, it's really important. And it is actually one of the minerals that's measured in the hair test that I talked about earlier. So we use that test regularly because it just gives so much information on deficiencies. Anyway, I promised to share with you the natural compound that has been amazing for Elliot, and I know it's helped many others who have been working on resolving their vitamins and mineral deficiencies, and it's helped them with their histamine issues at the same time. When I mentioned earlier some of the jobs that methylation does, it does so many different things, including making the melatonin and removing histamines. That's only really quite a small part of what actually methylation does. Probably one of the most critical roles that methylation does is makes a molecule called creatine. So creatine is essential for the energy that we use in our brain and our muscles, but it's also essential to give energy to our cell walls in our guts. And so you may have already watched this video, I'll put it up here, in which I share the tremendous benefits that Elliot got from supplementing with creatine monohydrate. And I know of many others who have found that by supplementing with some creatine, it just gives their methylation a little bit more capacity, which is then available for their body to help get rid of histamines. And it also gives them more energy for their brain and for their muscles, and to help them with food digestion. So histamine intolerance really doesn't need to control your life. You can feel better naturally by nourishing your body and supporting those enzymes and healing your gut, because your healing starts with understanding how your body works. So in my next video, we're going to be looking at how we can do home blood tests, and then how we can analyse the results ourselves, and we'll be looking at optimum ranges for our health. If that video is not showing here yet, please subscribe and press the notification bell, and then you'll be notified when that one comes out. So here's Elliot with his fun fact, and thanks so much for watching.
Hello, and welcome to my fun fact. Did you know that some of our most common English words are actually linguistic mistakes that became permanent? It's thanks to something called rebracketing, where people unintentionally shift the boundary of a word. For example, what do you think an apron was originally called? Or an adder, the snake? Well, back in the day, they were originally a napron and a nadder. Over time, when people heard phrases like a napron, their brains reinterpreted it as an apron, and the N just vanished from the original word. But it's not always about losing an N. Sometimes rebracketing can add one. That newt you see? It used to be an oot, and your nickname? That was once an eek name, meaning an additional name. So next time you put on an apron or spot a newt, remember you're witnessing the quirky, ever-evolving magic of language.